If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. In May of 1980, 32-year-old Dorothy Jane Scott lived a simple, predictable life in Stanton, California. She lived with her father's sister and never strayed far from her everyday routine. Dorothy was known as a devout, straight-laced Christian who never indulged in drinking or drugs. She was seemingly happy with her life the way it was. Dorothy was a single mother to a 4-year-old son, Shanti, who everyone called Sean. Her parents, Jacob and Vera, would keep him at their home in Anaheim while Dorothy Jane went to work. Every evening she would get off work, go straight to her parents to get her son, and the two would return home. Dorothy was employed at Swinger's Psych Shop, which her father owned, and later John Coca-Cola bought the store from him. The shop sold lava lamps, love beads, and trippy, fun, psychedelic items. On the night of May 27, 1980, Dorothy went to her parents to drop Sean off, where she changed from the black scarf she was wearing to a red one, and she left to go to get together with her co-workers for a meeting. She wore blue jeans, a long-sleeved maroon blouse, a red scarf, and a round turquoise ring on her left index finger. Dorothy's co-worker, Conrad Bostron, was bitten by a black widow spider and it got infected. He was not in good shape. Conrad's arm was swollen, so she drove him to UCI Medical Center in Orange to help him get treatment for it. Pam Head, a friend of theirs, tagged along with them to the hospital. Conrad was called to the back to see the doctor while Dorothy and Pam were in the waiting room watching television and flipping through the pages of magazines. When Conrad's appointment was done, around 11 o'clock that night, Dorothy decided to go get her car and park closer to pick them up, while Conrad and Pam were getting his prescription filled. After waiting for a while, Pam and Conrad walked outside to see where Dorothy was. The two saw Dorothy's car, a 1973 white Toyota station wagon, coming towards them. The headlights were so bright in their eyes. They were shocked because Dorothy bolted out of the hospital parking lot, leaving them behind. Pam said they waved their hands trying to flag Dorothy down, and there's no way she could not have seen them. The car made a right turn as she and Conrad chased after it, but suddenly the car sped up and was gone. Pam and Conrad stayed in the hospital parking lot for 2 hours, thinking Dorothy would surely come back for them, but she did not. They called on the help of police at the medical center, but at the time, they all agreed there wasn't a reason to act drastically. Maybe something family-related came up. Maybe there was an emergency to attend to regarding Sean. They were scrambling for any excuse that would lead Dorothy to speed off so abruptly without them. Around 4:30 or 5 in the morning on the 28th, a car was discovered engulfed in flames in an alley in Santa Ana in the 800 block of South Townsend. It was Dorothy's car, but no one was inside. The alley was only 10 miles away from the hospital, and it's suspected that the alleged kidnapper parked, set the car on fire, and ran off with Dorothy as his hostage. Dorothy's father, Jacob, wanted to help with the missing person investigation, and UCI police told him they thought it was best if he kept things under wraps so the newspapers did not blast any information that would hurt the investigation. Jacob agreed. Dorothy's mother, Vera, was at home when the phone rang about a week after her daughter's disappearance. The caller asked her if she was related to Dorothy Scott, and she replied yes. The male caller said, "I've got her," and he quickly hung up. 2 weeks after the vanishing of their daughter, Jacob had enough and called the Register newspaper in Santa Ana. The paper released the story about Dorothy Jane Scott on Thursday, June 12, 1980. That Thursday morning, Pat Riley, the managing editor, got a phone call while in the newsroom. The mysterious male caller told Pat he had kidnapped Dorothy. Not once, but twice during this phone call, the man said he had murdered her. Pat said the man said, quote, "She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She denied having someone else. I killed her." Pat said that after a lot of years, you get a feeling about people, and the man on the phone sounded genuine. He said the caller gave details that were not released in the paper, such as Conrad Bostron's spider bite, and he described the clothes that Dorothy was wearing that day. The caller even mentioned the red scarf Dorothy had on, which means this man did see her after she left her parents' house that night. Pam said she was with Dorothy the whole time at the hospital, except for a few moments when Dorothy went to use the bathroom before she went out to get her car. Pam said such a phone call never took place. Jacob said that his daughter did not ever really date anyone, and she didn't have a boyfriend. He said, quote, "We just can't put that together. She worked from morning to evening. She lives with my sister. She might have had an occasional date, but they were few and far between." As mentioned in the beginning, Dorothy was a happily single mother. Dennis Terry, the father of Sean, lived in Fairgrove, Missouri. He went to California to visit, but left a few days before Dorothy went missing. Dennis called Jacob from Missouri the day of his daughter's disappearance. Jacob called him back that evening, and Dennis did answer the phone. So he was definitely in Fairgrove, Missouri during this time. Now, a few months before Dorothy was likely kidnapped, an unknown man had been calling her at her job. She told her mother, Vera, that the voice was familiar, but she couldn't think of his name. During some phone calls, he would profess his love to her, how much he was devoted to her, and that he was head over heels in love with her. At other times, he would call threatening to kill her. The caller would stalk her, telling her over the phone exactly what she was wearing. One time, the caller told her to look outside. When she did, she saw something on the hood of her car. There laid one wilted rose, a morbid foreshadowing of what was to come. Vera said there was one phone call in particular that haunted Dorothy. He said if he ever got her alone, he would completely dismember her, cutting her body up into bits saying no one would ever find her. Due to that, Dorothy began taking karate lessons a week before she disappeared, and she had even talked about wanting to purchase a small gun for protection. Police were beginning to lose faith that they'd find Dorothy alive. UCI Police Chief Michael Mitchell said, quote, "They, referring to Dorothy's parents, are probably reaching the point that we have reached, that we probably won't find Dorothy alive. There is always a glimmer of hope, but it isn't very bright." Over the next few years, Jacob and Vera would get creepy phone calls, usually on Wednesday afternoons when Vera was the only one home, asking if Dorothy was there, or claiming they had kidnapped their daughter and killed her. The person was a soft-spoken male, and he never stayed on the line for long. Police did eventually install a voice recorder for Dorothy's parents, but they were never able to trace the calls since the caller would hang up so fast. 4 years later, August 6, 1984, a grisly discovery was made by a subcontractor for Pacific Bell when he was preparing to dig a trench for putting cables under Santa Ana Canyon Road. Anaheim Police Sergeant Bill Wright said, quote, "While backing up his tractor over the small trees and shrubs in the area, he observed human bones and called the police." 8 molars were found amongst the skeletal remains. Dr. Robert Kelly, a forensic odontologist who was on retainer with the coroner's office in Orange County, compared them to Dorothy's dental records. The molars were a positive match to Dorothy's. Jacob said, quote, "Before, you didn't know whether she was or wasn't. It's a big relief. It's one hell of a relief." Among Dorothy's skeletal remains, which included her skull and limbs, police found a woman's wristwatch and Dorothy's turquoise ring. Her case was being investigated as a homicide. Those remains were being kept at the coroner's forensic facility as evidence. An autopsy could not determine Dorothy's cause of death. On top of Dorothy's remains were remains of a dog. A timeline was made, and investigators noted that in October of 1982, there was a fire in that very spot. They surmised that her remains had been there since that fire, and not put there after it. The dog's remains may have been buried on top of hers to confuse police dogs. Web sleuths do have a theory that they think is a possibility, so let's get into it. Mike Butler, a mechanic who resided in the Santiago Mountains, had, quote, "alternative religious beliefs." He was said to be strange, unstable, a bear of a man who you would not want as your friend or even simply as someone you knew in passing. Mike was said to be involved in cult activity. He was, quote, "the son of a New Zealand war bride and an army captain who would drag his family along to every place he was stationed." At 20 years old, Mike was drafted into the U.S. Army and eventually became a drill instructor for new recruits. In 1967, Mike was sent to Germany, where he became a reporter, writing for Stars and Stripes News. After his stint in the Army, Mike's life went into a new direction as he became a roadie for various bands, including the Beach Boys and an all-girl rock band his sister was in called Bertha. From there, he decided to settle down in Orange County, California, where he started working as a mechanic. Mike moved to Orcas Island, where people knew they could go to him for anything they needed fixed. He was known as the handyman to all the locals. The theory is that Mike was so obsessed with Dorothy that maybe, in his mind, he was in a relationship with her, and seeing her with Conrad pushed him over the edge. It is said that Mike did have a few small encounters with Dorothy's father, Jacob, which makes people wonder if that's why, if Mike was the caller, he didn't talk to Jacob very much on the phone and tried to only call when Vera was home alone. Maybe he thought Jacob could recognize his voice. According to Living magazine, Dorothy's son Sean had allegedly been in contact with a website named Crime Blogger 1983. The owner of the website said they were in contact with Sean, and he gave them pictures of his mother. Living magazine wrote that Sean told Crime Blogger 1983 that he had never heard of Pam or Conrad before. He knew of his mother's case, but supposedly those names never came up, though they were in newspapers from 1980 and 1984 and 1987. Sean told the blogger that he didn't remember anything about his mother because he was so young at the time. Everyone told him about how much his mother loved him. Sean said that Mike Butler was obsessed with his mother, and reportedly, Mike was a suspect at one time. Mike's sister worked with Dorothy at the Swingers Psych Shop. This could be how the caller knew Dorothy's schedule so well. Sean told Crime Blogger 1983 that he tried to get in touch with Mike's sister on multiple occasions, but she would constantly avoid him. Whether Mike was her stalker or not, we may never know. Mike Butler died in 2014 of pancreatic cancer. The calls to the Scott's residence had stopped after Jacob answered one of the man's unexpected calls during the night in April of 1984. Jacob told the caller they had the wrong number. For whatever reason, the calls quit coming, at least for a few months. People wonder if there was a reason the caller would not speak to Jacob, only Vera. Could it have been someone Jacob knew? Maybe Mike Butler, maybe not. But was the caller scared that Jacob would know who he was? Ever since their daughter went missing, Vera and Jacob were raising Sean, who was 8 years old at the time his mother's remains were found. Jacob said his grandson was beginning to understand a lot more than he did at only 4 years old, and it was impacting him more emotionally. Though Jacob said Sean always had their shoulders to lean on. To Crime Blogger 1983, Sean reportedly told them that Dorothy's friends wanted to adopt him, but Jacob was absolutely not for that. During the investigation, authorities questioned Dorothy's co-workers and customers of the Swingers Psych Shop. But due to Dorothy mainly working in an office in the back of the shop, she didn't really interact much with people who frequented there. They began to focus on sex offenders, but that led to dead ends. Jacob and Vera went to many different psychics, desperate for any answers. Reportedly, detectives even contacted a psychic that they knew, but there were never any leads in Dorothy's case. Through all of that, there was finally closure for Dorothy's friends and family, at least in knowing if she was or wasn't out there somewhere alive, and the healing process could properly begin. Her funeral service was on Wednesday, August 22nd, 1984, at Forest Lawn Memorial, Cypress, at the Church of Our Father. There were loads of flowers, a beautiful framed picture of Dorothy Jane Scott with her bright smile, and ribbons that read "Sis" and "Beloved Sister." Dorothy's memorial service was originally planned to be her uncle, James McKee's funeral. He was 60 years old and passed away of cancer. However, the family decided to have his funeral be combined with Dorothy's memorial. Over 50 people were in attendance. Dorothy's brother, Jim, spoke at her memorial, saying, quote, "Where do you start? Dorothy lives. Maybe not in that body, but she lives," as he pointed back towards her picture that was enveloped by flowers. At the time of the memorial, her remains were still being held as evidence, and it wasn't certain when or if the family would ever be able to be in possession of them to properly bury their daughter. Jim said that he spent a lot of time with his sister while she lived her last days. He knew she was at the hospital that night, and they kept in communication all the time. He said of her, quote, "To me, she exemplified the word give. She'd just give and give and give, no matter what it cost her. She spent her last hours giving and being concerned about others." Dorothy may not have been wealthy when it came to money or fancy things, but Jim told everyone in attendance at her memorial service that despite that, she was very rich. Quote, "We have all suffered a great loss, but I am sure Dorothy would want this to be a time to give. She would have wanted to give everyone here an opportunity to think about the other side, where we must all appear before the judgment of Christ." Jim also wanted everyone there to accept Christian redemption. About the grief, Jacob said they'd buried it, and quote, "Now we're going to start living like people ought to." The caller rang twice more around this time, and Jacob said, quote, "I'm afraid that we're dealing with a person who is really sick. Why should they keep it alive?" Referring to the grief and anguish that they were going through. The caller not only wanted to torture Dorothy, but, seemingly, her parents too. Jacob passed away in 1994 on Dorothy's birthday, and Vera passed in 2002. Sean still has no answers as to who murdered his mother. This concludes the case of Dorothy Jane Scott. Until next time, everyone stay safe and take care.